Gilcrease Museum was founded here in Tulsa in 1949, and our founder was Thomas Gilcrease. And he was enrolled in Mvskoke Creek Nation, and in the early 1900s, as a result of the Dawes Act, he was given an individual land allotment. And it just so happened that that land allotment was in Glenpool at the first major site of oil discovery in Oklahoma. So he became very wealthy by the time he was about 20 years old. And as he traveled, as he got to see more of the world, he saw some of the museums in Europe, and he decided that he wanted to create a museum, but for the Americas and around the art, history, and culture of the North American continent and some South American as well. So he really put almost all of his wealth into building a museum collection to share with the public. And given his heritage, Mr. Gilcrease was especially interested in Native American history and culture, and he even employed some Native artists early in the museum's history to select works to purchase and act as curators here at Gilcrease. So we have this extraordinary collection that includes archaeology and anthropology, paintings and sculpture, and library and archives that covers a 13,000-year span of time from the North American continent. So it was about 2 years ago now, we started conversations with representatives from the Henry Luce Foundation, and that's an organization that funds American art projects at museums and cultural organizations all around the country. And we proposed a couple areas of the Gilcrease collection to them that have really been underutilized. Like many museums, we only have about 5% of our collection on view. And what this grant will enable us to do is to bring new research and photography and access to some of that 95% that is in storage. So we specifically focused on two areas. Our collection of work by Thomas Moran and his wife, Mary Nima Moran, a noted American artist from the late 19th century. And the other project is looking at Native American painting traditions in the Gilcrease collection over a broad time span, really looking at the last 150 years from hide paintings, muslin paintings, ledger art, to artists in 20th century from the Kiowa Six all the way up through contemporary artists working today. And we're looking to see how traditions have really evolved over time, but also how artists working now might be responding to work from the past. And in both cases, these collections are largely works on paper, so they're fairly delicate, they're susceptible to fading, so they're not works that we can display for long periods of time. So by doing new photography of these collections and making them available online, doing new research into some of these artists and making that available to the public as well, we're hoping to, create a resource that's based around Gilcrease Collection that anybody can access, whether they're here in the building or remotely. The grant's really looking at works that are already part of the Gilcrease Collection, but that haven't really been a key focus for our exhibitions or publications in the past. So they're works that we've had for quite a while, but haven't had a chance to properly research. So the earliest works that are under this grant are hide paintings from the Northern Plains that are really spectacular, and they show that painting has been part of Great Plains cultures for a long, long time, long before Europeans ever arrived in the Americas. Hide painting has been a tradition in the Great Plains for centuries, and a couple of the hides in the Gilcrease collection are buffalo hides, which was also deerskin is sometimes used, buckskin. Later in the 19th century, as the bison numbers dwindled, cowhide might also be used. And then cloth was used too, so muslin and cloth ones that became more available in the 19th century. So we have I think examples of several of those here in the Gilcrease collection. Certainly a lot of these artists were interested in portraying the daily life that they observed around them. So we have a lot of images that show, just scenes from around a household or preparing food, hunting, even ceremonies or dances, or simply a parent teaching a child a very small task. So these really beautiful glimpses of everyday life or of special events as they're happening. But really, it's the variety is infinite. I mean, it's really limited only by the artist's creativity. So we'll see some really amazing works here, and we're looking forward to learning more about this collection and to having some new discoveries as we go through this project. What this grant really funds is new positions for Gilcrease Museum to conduct some of this work. So among the positions we're hiring are 2 curatorial scholars. So we'll be seeking a curatorial scholar with a background in Native American art who can research really the span of these objects and look at artist biographies. Do we know who created a certain piece? What was their story? Can we actually write that down? A lot of these artist biographies are unpublished. And in some cases, these scholars may be reaching out to family or to descendants of the artists to learn more about them. And so for something like the Hyde paintings, it might be, can we identify who created this piece? Are there other works in private collections or museum collections that might give us some clues? And for some of the more recent works, it's going to be tracking down who some of these artists were, really sharing their life stories and really celebrating their work, especially for many of these artists who are largely unpublished. So the grant totals $890,000, and that will fund up to 6 new positions for both research and collections care. So while we have curatorial scholars researching these artists, researching the artworks, we'll also have some folks working on photographing the work. So we have new high-resolution images that we can share. We'll have some people doing cataloging, getting all of that information recorded so we can share it online. We'll also have conservators working on these collections to make repairs, rehouse them, make sure that we're doing our best to preserve this artwork long term so it's there for future generations. We'll be starting this work in 2020, and it's a 3-year grant, so this will be ongoing over the next couple years. We will certainly have some of these works available online and some of this information published online, hopefully even before the end of that 3-year period. And then Gilcrease is also working right now on plans for a building renovation and expansion. And we are hoping to have some of these works newly available, probably for the first time, when our building opens in 2023 or 2024. Over that 3-year period, that's really, we knew it would take a while to do some of these projects. I mean, we're going through thousands of artworks and really doing research and new photography. So the funding will come in a couple of batches, but it funds then the salaries for those positions over that time. So we will be posting some of these positions pretty soon. So we'll be looking for curatorial scholars to hire for both of these areas. And so if you know any young scholars out there who might be looking for some museum experience, we'll be advertising the positions here before the end of the year. There's hundreds of Native artists represented in the Gilcrease Collection, and some of the most prominent ones include Woody Crumbo, and he was a good friend of Mr. Gilcrease, helped introduce him to many other artists, and he was even part of an artist in residency here with Gilcrease Museum in the 1950s. So we have this really incredible collection of Woody Crumbo's work, his printmaking, drawings, and paintings. We also have a work by A.C. Blue Eagle, who's another noted artist from the mid-20th century here in Oklahoma. Willard Stone, who's a Cherokee descendant. His wood carving is really inspired by Art Deco design and combines really ideas about contemporary politics with artwork. We've got great representative samples from the Kiowa Six. And also we have some works by contemporary artists living and working today. Artists like Norman Akers, who's a Pawnee and Osage, and he's a professor at University of Kansas. We've got works by Frank Buffalo Hyde, by Earl Biss, T.C. Cannon, and it's great to see how these works have evolved over time. We brought a piece out by Woody Crumbo to share today, and this piece is one of more than 1,000 works of art that are part of a new grant that Gilcrease recently received from the Henry Luce Foundation. And we'll be able to digitize and really bring new research and resources to this collection. This particular piece by Woody Crumbo is a blue horse. It's kind of a signature style. It's a gouache on paper and highlights, I think, Crumbo's whimsical approach to portraying animals. He's often using colors that are not, accurate to nature, but really capturing some of the emotion and the feeling of portraying animals in his work in these really wonderful ways. I think one of the things we're really excited for here is to show how some of these painting traditions are part of Oklahoma's history, because Oklahoma is a place where so many tribes were removed to, and from all over the country. Many artists from many different backgrounds and heritages that were then based in Oklahoma were inspired by one another. So you see this really interesting intertribal influence happening here among the arts community, and this grant will give us an opportunity to really explore how people in Oklahoma came together and how that's represented in artwork.